be with us today to kick off our Iowa Connect series. So for those of you that don't know, the International Aviation Women's Association was founded in 1988 and really brings together women across all sectors of aviation and aerospace. So general aviation, government side, manufacturers, defense, commercial, all aspects, all the support that goes into supporting aerospace and aviation, and really promotes women's advancement around the globe, not just American. We have members all over the world. And Ellen and Chris and I all serve on the IAWA, so not the state, the International Aviation Women's Association Advisory Board. And Ellen and Chris both co-chair the advisory board and really help support the board of IAWA in any way that we can in terms of connections or support. The IAWA really helps to do the promotion of women and connections by a bunch of different ways. So they do regional events, there are emails, and there are annual conferences. And I'm very excited to announce that a fellow advisory board member yesterday from USAIG, which is an aviation insurance company, has graciously given 2 tickets to Vaughn students to participate in the annual conference, which is next week. Now, IAWA has gone with this really incredible virtual world that they create for the annual conference, which includes exhibition halls and pre-recorded panels and main speaker live events. And so this is an incredible opportunity for 2 women at Vaughn to be able to connect to potential internships and jobs and mentoring through IAWA. And so I've offered both of those spots to the current president of our Society of Women Engineers and our current president of our Women in Aviation chapter. And so they are going to be able to access all of this great material, not just next week when the conference actually takes place, but for the next 3 months, they can access that information and have really a professional development experience unlike they probably ever had. But I know something that's sort of missing right now since we can't send students off to their usual annual conferences. This is a wonderful opportunity. So with that, I will not give too much background information about Chris or Ellen. That's part of their story. But just to say that they are both women who have done incredible things in terms of their professional careers and are so willing to share that experience with you and things that you might learn. And it's just my wonderful pleasure to introduce Ellen and Chris. And who wants to go first?
I think Chris nominated me.
Yes, I did.
Right. She's bigger than I am.
Yep.
And I'd like to add something that to what Sharon said is that you guys out there too can go and listen to the conference and get a lot of information on jobs also. So it's the conference is open for both males and females. So as far as my background, first of all, I am a fellow New Yorker, in case you haven't figured that out from my accent. And I went to Far Rockaway High School, so I am from Queens also. When I graduated from college, before your parents were even born, women only went to college to either get an MRS or to teach. I was a math major, science minor, so I can relate to you guys. And so my first job, I was hired and I was married, so I had to work to support my husband who was going to dental school. We're still married. But at any rate, the interesting thing about that is that I was hired as a math major from Westinghouse Electric Corporation, and what I was given to do was to file the computer programs. After all, I was a woman, so I was filing the computer programs. Luckily, I had a mentor who must have had a wife who had a brain and figured out that I might have a brain. And so they taught me how to write the programs, Fortran, COBOL, FAP. If you've seen Hidden Figures, I am the white version of Hidden Figures, the women in there. But I didn't even know that women had written the programs until I saw the movie Hidden Figures, which was just a couple of years ago. So at any rate, we went on to develop actually a program that analyzed for Chrysler Corporation who was driving what cars, what color were they, how old were they, stuff that you just go now into your iPhone and say, how many people are older than 50 to drive their cars? We wrote the program to develop that. And we had, so fast forward, my husband was in the service, so we had to go into the Air Force. And at that time, women went with their husbands and then went and raised a family, which is what I did for 10, 12 years before I realized I wanted to not only go back into the market, into the workplace, but also putting 3 kids through college, because I had 3 children, was going to cost a bit of money. And so I wanted to help out. That being said, my first lesson to you is don't sit around for 12 years and wait until to get another career without being in school or staying up on the in the knowledge on the type of work that you had done in the past. Because my big computer that took up the whole room and the key bunch that I key bunched the cards on to write the programs was now a laptop, which I had no idea how to program or how to use. So I was about to go back to my graduate degree, which I should have been doing all along. That's a hint to you guys. Even if you just do 1 class a year, just to stay on top of everything. I then, so my brother was starting a company and was a helicopter leasing company with 2 other guys. And he said, instead of going to school, why don't you start this company with us? At which point I said, why not? And so I started working as, quote, the CFO, since I was the math major, but knew nothing about being a CFO for this helicopter leasing company. Eventually they realized that they really needed a CFO, and I wore a lot of hats. And that company became NetJets, and we established fractional ownership, bought a lot of aircraft. I learned everything from insurance to benefits, etc., to customer service, etc. And I worked there for 32 years. And then lo and behold, in 2011, the CEO had been replaced, and they told me I was to retire. And believe it or not, I was flabbergasted, had no idea where to begin to get another position. I had been in the same position for 32 years. I didn't even know how to write a resume. Thank God I had 2 daughters. One was a graphic designer and one was a journalist. So they wrote my bio, they designed my website, and they ordered cards. And we were using cards in 2012. Now you don't even do that. But at any rate, and that's how I got started as Ellen Slow Consulting. And also the guys that I had mentored at NetJets, who also lost their job and were now working for other companies, then recommended me. And so I very quickly got jobs as a consultant. So a couple of things: do not burn any bridges wherever you work. If you get a sudden change, I mean, and now in this pandemic, many of you may not be able to find a job that fits with your qualifications. You may have to do it, and somebody will notice you eventually. In addition, I had to take a real cut in salary because I was the senior VP at NetJets, and now I'm a consultant. But you learn how to live with less and you adjust. And so that would be my recommendation, and that's my advice to all of you. I'm happy to answer any questions from you after Chris goes and gets her background, and that's it.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Okay, Chris.
No, I always like to pull on other people's stories, Sharon. So Ellen's story is about making opportunities, taking opportunities, getting help from others, and being incredibly resilient. My story I'll make a little bit briefer, but I did not keep the first husband, and I have a biology major with a math minor. And so I ended up being a vice president at Boeing from just joining the company at the bottom of the rung inside the shops and working industrial engineering practices for 2 years. And I think what I bring to the workplace is dedication and real hard work, but I'm a bit of a systems thinker. So it's one of my little nuggets to share with all of you today is if you can start thinking about how our systems interact just in life, they're inside industry also. And so any decision has a direct impact or a reaction that happens inside another system that it touches. So I find that really fascinating. And I think that as we look forward into the skill set that people are going to be needing, Ellen and I are starting to hear a lot from the people we consult with about risk management and being able to think not just deep in one subject, but have a broad spectrum of how different sectors of the industry work and what the financial risk and actual productivity outcomes will be. I started in the wire shop. I was open to all kinds of different experiences, et cetera. I tried to move myself every 2 or 3 years because I'm naturally curious. Ellen and I come to all of you today to thank you for the time with us, but also to say that we have been where you've been. And these are hard times, but they're not impossible times. And I'm proud of all of you that are educators, and I'm proud of all of you that are students because you're investing in yourselves and in the next generation. So I was at Boeing for 35 years. It is the world's premier OEM, which is original equipment manufacturer. It was a fabulous career, very exciting, and I spent the last 10 years on the CEO's leadership team. So at the end of my career at Boeing, I had 5,000 employees, and I had done pretty much all the work or the job codes that I actually hopefully led and inspired really well. So it's a very interesting thing. I ended up vice president of business operations, and many of you know what that is. It's partnered closely with finance, and I was accountable and responsible for a whole bunch of stuff that happened at the Boeing company for a long time. Really great career. I had a couple things I'd like to point out that both Ellen and I have used together and separately in our consulting businesses, but also with our own adult children and and Ellen's adult grandchildren. My daughter is currently unemployed, so I kind of know what you're going through. My son's in the safety program at Boeing, so he's sort of trying to figure out how long that job will last. And we're starting to see real infrastructure changes throughout the world in lots and lots of industries. And we can't be naive or not understand fully what the pandemic is doing to aviation at this time. Boeing has just released its long-range market forecast, and they're impacting another 11% drop than anticipated across the next 10 years of the build cycle and the customer acquisition processes in terms of the quantity of passenger jets we're going to be putting out. So it's a big thing. My son Kurt was in the factories the other day, and he said, "Mom, it's eerie. The factories are really quiet. We're at really low production rates without seeing a lot of recovery on the current horizon." I give that to you just as a fact, not really to be depressing or to kind of bring you down. A couple of tools that have helped myself along the way, I'm going to get into, and then I'm going to stop talking, and Ellen and I would like to listen better and engage in conversations with you all. I used something early in my career that many of you may have had in your Psych 101 classes, maybe even in high school. There's a famous, research scientist named Abraham Maslow. And Maslow talked a lot about in his work over the years, and it affected me quite a bit, that you think of a pyramid and you're stacked up with different skill sets and things like that. It's very difficult for people to move on from one step of that ladder in the pyramid to the top unless the requirements at that level have been met. So I had the privilege of representing Africa for the Boeing company for many years and have delivered lots of jets into that continent. And it brings to mind some of the meetings I've had with the Ethiopian students and women in aviation in different parts of Africa. And so if you think of a place that has less privilege than the United States or less development than the United States, you think of things like you really can't come to school and learn or teach unless you have food, water, and shelter. When I was in Africa, I learned that the basic tenets of safety were also very important. So when you think about your career, which you are the CEO of your own life, you must be very thoughtful about where you are. If your family is if your family is currently dealing with, or you're dealing with food shortages, or you don't have access to technology, or you don't have a safe place to live, these are things that have to be addressed, and you'll solve them, but they have to be solved before you can move on, I think, to the next layer of competence and advancement. So it's really quite an interesting study. It won't take you long. You can all Google it. Maslow's he's pretty fundamental, but it was an eye-opening exercise for me. And I've used it a great deal. Conversely, I took a class many, many years ago that was really, really an important class. And Ellen touched on it, and I think Sharon and I have talked about it in the past. I think academics love it because you will go through a whole journey of your career and your personal life, and you will end up formed by all the experience you have. And so one of them is, as you go through life, as Ellen pointed out, you start to reassess quite routinely what success means to you. Mm-hmm. I have to tell you guys, I really did not ever aspire to be an executive. I didn't know about the compensation associated with that. I like to work hard. I like to solve problems. I'm very extroverted, and I really liked the team environment that we worked on with design build teams. I've worked on every model since the 707 the Boeing company has, and I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that I've always been invited to join groups. I've been invited to be promoted, and once you kind of get that reputation, things really start to happen for you. And it is a different time. There are different skill sets. There's different opportunities, but Ellen and Sharon and I stay very close to our colleagues in all different sectors: law, finance, market analysis, analytics, IT, and the duopoly, the Airbus, the product development of different programs. So we would just like to invite you to discuss with us or ask us tough questions. And Ellen and I are happy to meet with a small group of you, or if there's any need to have further conversations, Stephen and Sharon, we're open to that also. So we're here to help. We got kids and grandkids in the same boat, so we're living it ourselves. So I think with that, we'll just open it up, Stephen, if that's good with you.
Terrific. Thank you both so much. I'm so glad that you were the first to do this. Thank you. All right, Stephen, do we have some?
I have the Q&A and the chat open, so if anybody wants to either submit their questions on the Q&A, I could read them out, or if you want to write them in the chat and I could give you access to ask them yourself. While
they're doing that, I want to add that there are jobs available. I believe Pratt & Whitney told us that there were jobs available, and the FAA. So right. We don't want to make everybody look as if this is all a very down market. Right. So there are some positives. You may not get as what I was trying to point out, you may not get the exact position that you think you deserve right now, but sometimes just taking one job and learning on the job is the way, that's the way I learned. That's the way Chris learned.
Mm-hmm. You bet. And I think Ellen's reiterated that very well. And each experience will put a lot of skill sets into your bucket. And as you fill that up, employers and people of discernment are looking for people that know how to problem solve, people that have leadership experience, even in the private sector, people that know how to form teams, motivate teams, and are good team players and team leaders. So there's no reason to step away from volunteer work that is developing your skill set and can be used as career launching.
And another thing, since we're giving advice, we
No,
forgot.
we don't need questions. We'll talk forever. So that's
Yeah, we
bad.
could
Yeah.
talk forever. um, did I forget what oh, do not be afraid to ask questions. Just
Yeah.
to give you an example, I'm actually mortified to tell you this, but I actually went up to Richard Santulli, who started NetJets, and said, and I'm a math major, so I'm putting that right out there. How many engines does a twin star have? Okay. I also knew nothing about insurance. They gave me the job of doing the insurance on their first big deal, 6 Super Pumas that were being leased to petroleum helicopters. And they said to me, "You're in charge of insurance." I called my husband and said, "What kind of insurance do we have?" He said, "Well, I have malpractice. We have homeowners insurance. I think I have life insurance." I said, "Okay, you're useless." And so I had to call PHI, Petroleum Helicopters, the lessee, who, and ask him to explain to me how the insurance clause was protecting the lessor, which was me.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to picture this. They're down in Louisiana. They're on the oil rigs. This guy must have been sitting at his desk with his feet up, with a cigarette dangling. And he says to me, "Sweetheart, you need some help." Now, understand it's 1980. I just read the woman's book, and there was no way I'm going to take "sweetheart." However, I realized I really did need some help. So I swallowed my pride and I said, "I really do. So maybe you help me." And then I had a mentor who helped me and teach me everything I didn't know about insurance. So you have to ask. You can't be embarrassed that you don't understand something because
Right.
you never learned it.
Well, we have the first question from a student, and I'm sure that it applies to all the students and possibly some of the young alumni that are in the room, where they are asking if they could send you their resumes.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I tell all of the students in here, if you want to get it to either Chris or Ellen, you can pass them along to me or Phil or Maria, and we'll certainly pass them along. But we do have a question from one of our wonderful professors, Dr. Berlino. She asks, how do you both feel your academic studies prepared you for your important roles in the aviation industry?
Ellen, do you want to start?
Okay. I have to answer that by saying I never expected to be in the aviation industry. So my math major, an economics minor with another minor in science, helped somewhat, but I really think that a lot of my learning came about by my extracurricular activities in college, as well as a mother when I wasn't working. I was head of the PTA, so I learned how to deal with leadership and how to deal with people with entirely different theories and politics that I had. And so I think that helped as much, if not more, than my actual math, because even though I used the math kind of in computer science, but I learned that all on the job. What about you, Chris?
You know, I think it's a given that in Western culture and many other cultures around the world, the pursuit of academic credentialing is incredibly important. I think that people are better formed after they have been through an academic experience because they are challenged. I think their horizons are stretched, and as we're all talking about, they have some proven skill sets that gives them a leg up on it. I sometimes think that we in the developing nations forget what a privilege the U.S. school system is, and that we across the country really enjoy 18 years of free education, and to drop out of that or not have at least a GED is really difficult. it is a giant privilege to be able to study and learn from others. And the academics and education people give their entire careers to helping the next generation of leaders. It is a benchmark that I think most of Europe and the US can look to very proudly, as well as Canada and some of the other nations. But it is a huge privilege to have that degree. And it proves to me that people have fortitude, they have decision-making capabilities, they don't mind being tested, and they don't mind trying new things. So I think it's a really pivotal factor, and it gives you a practice ground. All of you that are students, you really are practicing, as Ellen suggests, to go into the real world and see if you can improve your skills or grow your skill sets. And it's very exciting. I got hired because I had a degree and was just a warm body. I've been a biology teacher. Why Boeing hired me, I have no idea. But it's exciting. It's a little scary, but when you have a degree, you can go in with your head held high and said, well, I made it through that. I should certainly can do another year somewhere else. And then it just grows and grows. So I think Ellen and I both would like to say that we continued our education through our employment. And
Right.
so giant corporations like Boeing, Rockwell, Pratt Whitney, other companies, they have, GE even has tremendous ongoing classes to help you assimilate into the industry quicker and to pick up skill set that you didn't have outside the normal academic career.
Is there an online resource such as a group that you would recommend for freshman students or the younger students that enable them to connect professionals in specific areas of interest?
That's a really, really important thing. And I think that I have an experience in South Africa where young women had joined Women in Aviation that was outside their schooling. And students can join Women in Aviation, which is sort of a feeder group for many of our other aviation women networks. And I think that's a tremendous foothold. The young woman that ran it 6 years in Ethiopia, or South Africa, sorry, she was a helicopter pilot for NATO and she was 24. And Tarara had been taking captives and people out of Bosnia, Herzegovina, I think, when she was 24, and she was a helicopter pilot out of South Africa. And one of the proudest moments of my life was giving her a check to help others in that region of the world. So I think that that's a great place to start. Ellen and Sharon, we should consider that, thinking about that with our Iowa stuff. So we'd be happy to look into that. I don't mean to blow off. I just don't have a specific group.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of on campus, all of those, National Society of Black Engineers, Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, Society for Women Engineers, Women in those are all great resources, chapters that you should get involved in on campus, because you get to go to the conferences where the women who professional members come and do recruitment and mentoring and all of those good things. So that's why it's important to join as a student.
I think it's also important. We had a scholarship winner that we out of Embry-Riddle in the Florida campus, and Christiana has just finished her private pilot's license, and she is now just graduated, headed for her master's, and she's got a pretty high-speed LinkedIn profile. So I mean, people are joining professional social media early in their student days to sort of pick up attention, et cetera. And a lot of us are on that and are happy to partner with people that contact us through LinkedIn.
That's an excellent point. And I would be remiss if I did not put a plug in for Career Services, who are also listening in, to say that that's one of the really important pieces that you're going to learn in CD 101, if you haven't already, is about how to make that LinkedIn profile as strong as it can be.
Correct. And we've actually started, we've refreshed something that was requested by our friend Dee Reimhold, who's also on our advisory board. But Dee is in charge of certification processes for the FAA. So she's a pretty high-speed person. The FAA is actually hiring right now. The FAA is hiring because people are losing their jobs in aviation. And she said that the government agency, our government regulatory agency, is able to pick up really, really talented people. All of them will need to be backfilled. So those of you educating yourselves now, do not be dismayed. We're going to need a lot of talented people to keep aviation squared away.
Also in business aviation, believe it or not, is doing well. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say it, but they're doing well, because those people who are on the borderline that would have taken commercials for some reason feel safer pandemic wise
Right.
by flying private. So they are flying private. So private
Right.
aviation is hiring.
Right.
And the company I work for, which is Clay Lacy,
Mhm.
they have a division in Oxford, Connecticut, which is not so far from you guys. The other operation is out in California. So there are other positions in the aviation industry that are hiring.
Cargo's hiring. Cargo's just
Cargo.
gangbusters right now. It'll be the premier, along with the defense sector. I've worked modestly in the defense sector, and Ellen's done. Have you done any work in the defense side, Ellen?
No.
Okay,
No,
so we don't represent defense very strongly here today, but defense is a very big topic these days. So as you can imagine, there are products and services doing that. I think, Stephen, if there aren't a whole bunch of questions, my son is 34 now, and I was thinking maybe I could share what Kurt went through, if that's appropriate. Do you have other questions right now?
Sure, there are a couple, but go ahead.
Okay, my son had severe learning disabilities as a young kid and spent most of his education in special ed. He had processing issues and some other things, but it took quite a while for him to get diagnosed and figured out. He chose not to take any medicine for his little bit of hyperactivity and focus issues, which was always fun. But Kurt had a really high IQ and low performance. So when he was in high school, he went into counseling. He went into the counselor's office and said, "Put me back into mainstream. I'd rather get lower grades and be challenged more than being in special ed," which of course caters to different populations of people in need. So Kurt got that diagnosis, and then he made a really difficult decision. He lived at home for 2 extra years and went to junior college. It took him 3 years to get through junior college, but they had terrific services, and he was embarrassed that he was living at home, but he just redefined what success was at 18, got his degree. His college professor, that's where all you academics are really critical, was linked to Boeing, which I didn't know. And Kurt started as a kinesiologist in the facilities organization, where he did training for people and eventually got his master's in Tulane in public health and ergonomics. So my kid had a really rocky start, went all the way through, and then Kurt has continued to add certifications. So because of the insurance time when he was 26, he lived at home after college for 2 years. I don't think he had a great social life, but his dad loved having someone around to hang out with. But Kurt did really well, and he just redefined success. And living away and having to pay too much rent when he was only working as a contract employee 4 days a week, couldn't afford insurance. So that was a perk for him. Kurt did something that I really think a lot of you might want to consider. He went out and joined, while he was still working on his graduate studies, remotely, working full-time, a local ergonomy service, a local ergonomy board, the Board of Ergonomics, which is a study of muscle and movement. And he helps the mechanics to make sure they don't injure their bodies while they're doing wing paneling and riveting rivets into and water sealing them into the wing tanks for the fuel, et cetera, on the airplanes. And so he met a wide spectrum of people from different industries, not all transportation, but many safety experts around his own age, and he volunteered for 2 years on that board. I feel that Kurt now at 34 is well positioned, should Boeing lay him off, to reach out to 4 or 5 different industries inside his friend group now who were on that board, and it's given him access to maybe working in a different transportation sector, but moving into the building sector and not losing his skill set and utilizing his education. So I just share that because quite often people would come in or get time on my calendar through the years and want to know why they hadn't been picked for management or leadership. And I had to tell them, you have not practiced it. You have to come in and tell me what you're doing in your community, with your church, with your synagogue, in your neighborhood. Are you running a food drive? What have you done that shows me you can lead people? So it's a little bit of a little bit of a plug for making sure you're staying up on the skills. Thank you.
Well, here's 2 different questions that kind of combine. I guess what what role did specific mentors play in your careers?
Oh,
And do you think students should start looking for them now? And how would you suggest that they better network each and every day, even as students?
Okay, I can answer mentors. I had a lot of mentors. Okay, basically, since I didn't know anything about insurance, USAIG was my underwriter, and they took me under their wing and taught me everything. So I had, that was important. And when I worked for Westinghouse, when I was right out of college, the guy who taught me how to write for Fortran and COBOL mentored me on every aspect of working for a corporation, which I had never done before. So I'm a real advocate to reach out to find mentors if you can. As far as finding a mentor while I was in school, I mean, it would be nice. I mean, Chris and I and anybody on the advisory board would be happy to mentor, or even on the Iowa board would be happy to mentor any of the students. Wouldn't you agree with me, Chris? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ellen has said it perfectly. I did it differently. I didn't even know what mentors were for the first 10 years of my career. And I would say that I had advisors, maybe. I think you have to think really carefully about what you want from a mentor. And I'm from the show me your plan, show me what you're trying to achieve, and do you want honest feedback? I think that over the years, mentorship has meant access to employment. I have defined it differently. I've defined it as a no-holds-barred discussion on whether you're doing an adequate job preparing yourself for the future. So I'm not the nicest mentor, but I'm happy to give you critical feedback. How's that? That might be too bold, but it's okay. Be brave. I think that I've told my kids this. It's really horrible, but when you get through a career, you're a lot smarter than you realize. So I think Ellen and Sharon and I would want you all to know, just be brave. It takes very little effort. Connect with people. My son got tremendous mentoring from his college professors. I will never be able to thank them enough. And so I'm very close to educators. I'm going to add another piece to that. I think sometimes the educators could use more time with the people in industry so that we have better tools with forecasting and understanding where the industries are going. And I haven't spent a long time in academia, but I've done a lot of work with professors in the universities that surround Seattle, making sure that they had tours of the facilities and had safe havens to ask all their hard questions too. So it goes both ways.
So let me ask Sharon and Stephen a question, because when I was in college, the reason I didn't have any mentors is because women were supposed to get married and have children. So why would they mentor me? So that's why I was mentored much more, actually taught once I was working. I'm assuming that it's different now, and that the professors at Vaughan are mentors and are mentoring, similar to what Chris had when she was in school. I mean, and it's only a 10-year difference. A lot happened between the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. It was a big change.
Yeah, I mean, Chris touched on this, this idea that your faculty members are your first mentors, or can be your, your high school teachers. You may have had a high school teacher who was a great mentor as well.
Right.
We have, and that importance of that relationship between industry and education.
Correct.
We have industry advisory councils that meet on a regular basis.
Great.
Industry representatives who come in and look at our curriculum and talk to our students. And what's really
great
is we've got a growing number of alums who have secured and moved up the ladder at various industries, who actually come back to campus on a regular basis and can talk to students about, hey, this is what happened to me. This is how I navigated to where I am. So there's a bunch of different opportunities for students to have connections with faculty members, with former students, to help them build that that ladder of success, right? To Chris's point of being very active and not
Right.
waiting for
Right.
somebody to say, "Hey, you look great. Can I help you?" It's not going to happen like that. It is really about a lot of personal motivation.
Yeah, I would agree. Like Sharon said, there are many alumni out there, and we're really trying to engage with more
Right.
across the board um, to give back. I mean, we always say time, talent, and treasure, but that time and talent is key to ensure the success of our students now, our young alumni, things like that. So if you are interested in it, we have a more defined mentor program in the strategic plan.
Mhm.
And we really would like the input of the students of what they would actually be looking for, and we could reach out to the alumni and start pairing them up, and certainly working with career services on doing that more. But I believe that alumni are very willing to give back in terms of their knowledge, and to make sure that who follows them are successful. So we have a couple more. I know we touched on it a little bit about COVID, but the question came up a couple times. What would you say is your best advice for students, recent graduates, in terms of entering the workforce and the difficult situation with all of the different things we're dealing with COVID?
I think this is a very challenging but very exciting time in history. And I think that it's very important that people stop and take a moment and sort of assess where they're at and start to capture the lessons of what they're going to learn during COVID. Stephen, to your question, to the student's question, this is a hard time to find work in some regards, but it's also an excellent time to shine and to really assess things. My daughter was graduated from school with a double major and in the West Coast, and then when the fiscal crisis hit of 2008 and 2009, which I don't pretend was as harsh as the 1930s Dust Bowl in America, our daughter elected, instead of going to work right away, to finish her master's degree. So I'm just saying there are other opportunities, hopefully, for people. I'm not trying to be glib about it, but sometimes we have to take different paths and different things. And to Ellen's very important comment earlier, you sometimes end up taking a job for the experience, but quite frankly, to pay the rent and to buy food while there's a lull in some part of the industry. We have a very good friend who left the aviation sector, was very disappointed with how she was treated at a large subcontractor, and has now moved into the home goods sector, which surprised us, but she had a skill set around what she wanted to do in terms of being an ethics control officer, and she found her niche in another industry. So she'd been to engines, she'd been to railroads, and then she ends up in a really different industry, but using her skill and talent. The aviation sector is so broad and so deep, there will be jobs, but it's going to take a while to sort out. And you might have to take a job now that's not your premier job. I have a couple of young people that I've mentored over the years who are now in the Seattle area in upper management at Starbucks Coffee. They were heavy business majors with huge operational experience, but they've put them to work in another industry in a whole nother way. Ellen, you touched on that before. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, and I think it's not as bleak as you think it is. I am working as a consultant for a California company that I have not been able to go to since February.
Right.
By the way, I have the antibodies, so it's not me that's concerned about going.
Yeah.
But you can work remotely.
Right.
My grandson, who just got a job, is being trained remotely. So there are things that are available for you. You just have to go reach out and try and get them, and be flexible enough that, I'm going to show up. I am going in October to California, and I'm going to show up with my mask on, even though I have the antibodies, and I'm going to work. And
Right.
that's what you have to do in this pandemic.
Now, I have to follow up with this because I know all the statistics, I'm afraid, but Boeing receives 100,000 applications a month. We have a tedious, slow, difficult HR process. Fortunately, it's much more transparent now, so the days of saying, oh, my niece needs a job are over. However, you do have to find someone that can advocate for you inside the system, and you have to be prepared for the kind of work that is offered. So if you can travel, as Ellen's suggesting, in terms of relocation potential,
Right.
if you have the right technology, if you have the willingness, I think that we can find people to help you a little bit. And that was the premise of these whole talks, was to be enthusiastic about the education you're getting, and to be empowering and helpful, that the industry is not dead, but there's still a lot of jobs will need to be filled.
Well, you just answered the last question.
Oh,
there was one about opportunities at Boeing in career growth and how the process goes at a big company like that. But you just answered it.
well, it's so funny. I tell people you can even be a doctor or a nurse at Boeing. We actually have on-site medical services. So it's when a large corporation has such a huge diverse job codes and different things to do. I mean, really incredibly interesting jobs that require specific skills but broad knowledge. But conversely, there are small companies that give you more opportunity, because when you're in a military industrial complex like the Airbuses or the Boeings of the world, there's a few spots at the top, but it's a whole bunch of foundation employees that make the whole thing run. It's my privilege to work in that industry, but there's lots and lots of partners and suppliers. And so you need to think very broadly about supply chain. I mean, maybe you'd like to be a buyer. Maybe you'd like to be an avionics software programmer. All these supply chains, we have hundreds of thousands of people that help us make the products at Boeing that are not Boeing badged, but they're going to go through we're going to go through a little tightening of the belt, but it's going to get better. People are going to want to fly. The world's economies are set up that way, and I think all air travel will come back. It's going to take a while, though.
Yes. Think about Amazon. Malin,
Yeah, right.
Malin is working for Amazon in the aviation department. I didn't even know they had an aviation department.
Right.
So it's not
How they do.
aviation company for you to investigate. You may have to broaden your horizons and look all around.
I think it's very easy for Ellen and I, to sit here and talk about our lives and our careers, and we certainly don't mean to be deprecating in any way. I will not pretend these journeys are easy.
No.
They are not easy. They require diligence, resilience, and preparedness. And those combinations, I know all of you have. And you can just look at your instructors who are treating you so respectfully and trying to just fill you up with everything they have. It's a big, exciting world. We'd love to have you in aviation, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Put your best foot forward. And if you're like my son and have a lot of challenges, it still makes the journey very rich and very exciting. And you'll learn everything. You'll learn so much from other people and with every experience you have.
Well, we're coming up on the hour. I wanted to thank both Chris and Ellen. This was a great kickoff event for this speaker series. I really, I knew it was going to be great. I was excited for it. I apologize again for the technical difficulties in the beginning, but it looks like, based on my emails, my phone, and the chat, that everybody that wanted to come was able to get in, and
great.
We'll be able to, we recorded this session, so we'll be able to get it out to other people that weren't able to attend. And we'll be able to post that on our website. John also told me from our PR department that we'll be able to do some things with that, and look forward to doing some more of these going forward. I understand that we have a line of people ready to do them. So just keep a lookout on your emails, and thank you again, Chris and Ellen and Dr. DeVivo for
thank you for putting this together, Sharon. Really, it's wonderful. It
Yeah.
really is.
Thank you
We,
both so much.
No, we are honored to be part of this panel and to help folks in any way. Ellen and I both work kind of part-time now with important consulting work, but we're available to you, and we really need really honest, strong feedback if these sessions are helpful or not, because we're going to have lots more of them. How's that? Okay? Thank you, Sharon and Stephen, and your
Thank you
entire
so
teams,
much.
okay? Good luck, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sharon.
Mhm.